all today. This is another day that we are together. The weather seems to have gotten better, and we hope that you're listening and watching, or if you're not, that one day you will. And today is a little bit different than what you've seen before, but I have with me Father Matt, and we'll get into that a little bit, along with Carrie, his wife. And you'll wonder why am I talking about her and him together? Well, we're going to talk about something called forgiveness in a little bit of time.
Well, and we've been together for a long time.
Yeah, I know. That's true, too. That's good. That's good. Well, I want to start off, as I always have, with except last time, of course, that I want to thank the sponsors that we have so that you can understand them as well. The Shee family is one that you've heard me say before, that we want to really give our heartfelt thanks to the Shee family, that they are the most generous and community-focused families in St. Johns County, and that they have their work at Tringali Barn, and it's a premier event and wedding venue, as you know, and the leadership is by Chris Shee, the family leadership that is there, that continues to support and uplift countless local causes. He does this with so many nonprofits, and they help so many others, and just amazing. And their commitment is to giving back what makes a lasting impact. That's what they're trying to do, and be able to do it in a way that we are truly grateful that at this time that they're in our community. It's so good. And we thank you, the Shee family, and you make St. Johns County much stronger. So thank you so much. And then we've got DJ's Clam Shack, and DJ's Clam Shack, as you know, is on Hippolyta Street, and it's just down here where people are craving for fresh, flavorful seafood in the heart of the old historic St. Augustine. And if you come to DJ's Clam Shack at 21 Hippolyta Street, where northeast meets Key West. So we're here, St. Augustine meeting Key West, and it's born in the Florida Keys and rooted in New England tradition. DJ serves up lobster rolls, fried clams, conch fritters, and more, made fresh from the highest quality ingredients at prices you'd find was really reasonable and you'll love. Open Tuesday through Sunday from 11 to 9. It's the perfect spot to have a bite and stroll the old streets of St. Augustine.
Wait, did you say you could get a lobster roll right there on Hippolyta Street?
Absolutely. And
It's
so good. It's so good. And it's the taste of one of the best seafood experiences in the country. So there you go. And we thank them for being with us, and we're grateful for their involvement here with our time. But right now, we're going to switch this over to Matt. He's I call him Father Matt. I call him Matt. I do all this, but he's been the rector of the Trinity Parish here in downtown St. Augustine. So I think it's only 200 years old. Is that about it?
204 now.
That's it. I knew it was somewhere around 200 years old.
Oldest Protestant church in Florida.
Yeah. So, and then we have the oldest Catholic church in Florida. So we got
right across the street.
That's it. That's it.
We meet in the middle for arm wrestling and feats of strength.
There you go. Well, I knew when you were here before that we talked about how you started off early on as not believing in God. And I remember that. And but this time, God not only has brought to you to that when you later became, when you were at the young what was the young
life,
yep. But now he's shown you that you can have real life as well. And
well, so, certainly saved my life.
That's right.
The Lord and an army of first responders here in St. Johns County.
And I'm going to be talking about those first responders, and I'm doing some stuff for them down in Key West right now to give them housing. So you're going to see how that plays out with that as well. And then I want to introduce Carrie, because I have not seen her here, and I think it's your first time.
It is.
You said, yeah. So
glad to be here.
So you're here because we're going to be talking, I know, about forgiveness, and I want people to understand what forgiveness can be for the wife that sees something that's going on, and how that is helpful, and why you have to forgive just the same as Matt.
Well, I've given her lots of ample practice in forgiveness. You know,
Yeah.
having a quirky husband means that your wife has lots of rehearsal in
Well, I
forgiveness.
can imagine how much rehearsal it is for you. I can appreciate that. So as we speak about all this, I remember right now we're within 4 days of a year.
That is true.
4 days.
Yep. Thursday morning will be the 1 year anniversary.
While you were having a lunch with somebody with you.
Well, I was actually just waiting for the Juniper Market breakfast to open up.
Right.
And there was a line of us sitting outside, and
That's right there on San Marco.
right there in San Marco.
Yeah, you've gone there before just to have some coffee and stuff, haven't you?
Oh, it's a great spot.
Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
you do. So you
Yeah.
stop there, and we call that Uptown.
That yeah.
That's Uptown.
Well, it's a nice, it's like a 3-block walk from my house.
Yeah,
It's a great place to get breakfast
there you
or
go.
lunch. It's open for lunch too.
Yeah, so there you go. So that's the way it is, and so you're there, sitting there.
Yeah, and it probably terrible for this is a whole terrible for their business, which is really a bummer because it's a great spot and it's a great place to eat, and the food's great and the coffee's great, and it's got a great ambiance and inside and outside, and it's an unfortunate experience that I put them all over the news.
Well, I think part of that is that you started here in St. Augustine on April Fool's Day, 2019.
I did start on April Fool's Day. This is true.
That's it. So I knew that. So I was thinking.
I probably should have thought through that one a little better.
That's it. So I remember that, and I remember that you're the rector as well at Trinity.
Which is a fancy way of saying lead pastor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that's it. So you are leading pastor, but now you're going to be sitting in a hospital bed.
That is what happened. Yeah, I spent a week in the hospital after the stabbing.
Okay, let's talk about that because
The stabbing or the hospital?
Well, I don't know. I think both of them are going to be together. So
It's I can tell you, it's not as the recovery from being stabbed is far worse than the event of being stabbed.
yeah.
Being stabbed is not that difficult. The repair job is really uncomfortable.
I know, but when you were there just sitting there,
Mhm.
this lady comes up to you with a knife.
A friend and I were sitting there waiting for the breakfast joint to open with about 5 other people, and a gal walks by and sort of had her arms like this and sort of just is walking by and stops and turns and looks at me, and I think what she said was, I have a lot of problems. And when you tell a pastor you have problems, they immediately listen up and, hey, tell me your story. So I was leaning back in my chair, as my mother did not appreciate, and I put my chair down and said, well, tell me your story, and kind of leaned over, and she just sort of leaned in and pulled this knife out and stuck it in and pulled it back out. And I'm not even sure she knew what she was doing. And I just remember thinking, that really went in a long way. And so, not really knowing what to say, I kind of looked at her and said, hey, you just stabbed me. Just surprised, like, you don't do that to people, who just stabbed somebody. So anyway, the look on her face completely changed and went just dark. And she turned the knife around and started coming after me to finish the job. And I started backing up. And then I coughed, and when I coughed, out came a lot of very red, bubbly blood, and I immediately knew that my lung had been punctured. And I realized this is going to be a complicated. This went from being I need to stay away from her stabbing me to this is going to be a problem. Then I coughed again, and now blood was coming out of my nose and my mouth, and at that point I felt blood going down my leg. And I had a absorbent T-shirt and a tight belt, and I thought, if I'm losing that much blood, we're 10 seconds in, it's down my leg, I need to get on the ground. Right. And because I knew that if I passed out, I probably hit my head on the way down. And the only thing worse than dying is killing yourself on the way to dying. Yeah. So I thought, I need to get on the ground. And I looked at my friend and said, hey, you've got to help keep her off me. Now, this girl is tiny, but my burly friend can't hold on to her. Whatever is going on in her, he can't get his arms on her. And then I did a weird thing. I Instead of just getting down on the ground, I did a 360 and then got down on the ground. And by doing the 360, there was a man named Chris Culver, who's the he's the like the personal, like the self-defense expert for immigration and customs. And he's going to work the non-usual way. He's a little early. He wants to take the scenic route, and he happens to be right there when I turn into his line of sight. If he'd have been a second earlier or a second later, he'd have never seen me. But he sees me, assumes he sees blood, assumes I'm getting jumped, and stops to stop whatever's going on. And when someone says he's been stabbed, Chris is probably the only non first responder in the county that had a combat chest seal in his med kit.
And we know what that does.
It's sort of like the seal on your coffee bag that lets vapor out but doesn't let vapor in. So it allows your lung, it stops the air from coming in your lung area, which collapses your lung. At this point, I can't breathe, and I know that my lung is collapsed because I can't breathe, and I'm on the ground, and I'm trying to stay on my left side, thinking that will help the blood come out, because if I lay on my back, I'm thinking blood will fill my other lung, and then I'll really have a problem. So they're trying to push me on my back, and I'm resisting.
Yeah. Well, they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing, but I really knew. No, I need to let blood run out, not fill my other lung. And they're like, nope, we need you on your back. And all the guys there were much larger and much stronger than I was. So very soon I was on my back.
Didn't the lady run away?
She ran and got on her bike and pedaled away.
Yeah. So they never had another shot at you again. That was
no. She was gone, and at that point, there's kind of a little mob of people around me trying to stabilize me, and I could hear at this point, I'm non-responsive to them, but I'm completely lucid inside my own head.
Right.
And so I'm having a conversation with the Lord, and I'm hearing them tearing my favorite clergy shirt.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm never wearing all my favorite stuff again at a meeting, because it's all gone at once. So they put the chest seal on and stabilized me. It's really interesting. They used 3 things developed for war. They used decompression needle, a chest seal, and this chemical your body, when you have something. So what the knife went into my lung and clipped my pulmonary artery, and your body naturally submits a chemical to make things clot off,
right,
so you don't bleed out.
Right.
But then after like 5 minutes, it submits a second chemical that makes you declot, so you don't have a stroke. And they came up for the Gulf War, or maybe it's for the Iraq War. They came up with a chemical that stops that chemical from declotting you. So those 3 things that were all developed for war. War saved my life.
Yeah. Well, and then you had to go for 40 minutes going up to Jacksonville at Memorial Hospital.
Oh yeah, so we don't have a trauma unit. Flagler's wonderful, but Flagler doesn't have a trauma unit. So they decided we need to transport. And I can hear this happening around me. I can hear there are 2 different phone calls going on, as I recall, trying to get the 2 life flight folks in the air. And apparently there was just enough fog that they didn't want to fly.
Right.
And I heard him say, "Look, it's rush hour and we're 40 minutes away. This guy's never going to make a transport."
Yeah.
So it was very clear from the stress in people's voice that it wasn't going well.
Yeah. And now you're there, and now you're laying down. And
well, the beautiful thing was later we went back and talked to the first responders, and the assistant fire chief said, "Oh," and I was like, "Was I really that critical?" And he said, "Well, once we got you stabilized and got you into the ambulance, we upgraded your chances of survival to 1%. Chris Passetti is like telling me this, and I go, huh, well, 1% doesn't seem that bad. Would I be here later? That doesn't seem that bad. And he's like, Matt, we are not evaluated on whether or not you're here and lucid. We're evaluated whether or not we turn a pulse over to the hospital for them to kill you.
Right.
So we did not think you'd be here.
Yeah.
So really a testament to a team of people, all because police, fire, county rescue, a county chief was on his way to work and pulled over and stopped and was part of this. And, everybody, first responders have the most amazing job because they go to work and everybody does the right thing and people die anyway. Yeah.
But that's really important. The first responders are so important to our community, just like teachers too, and others, but they are so good to be able to.
It's why we actually, in our church and our liturgies at our 4 churches, 4 services, we pray for first responders in every one of them every Sunday.
Well, you have to. I've shared this before with on this show, that my brother, Timothy Paul, who I named at age 14. When I was 14, he was born, and my parents let me name him, and I named him Timothy Paul. And he was a fireman, and he would always go into the fire before he was the captain. And if it wasn't safe for him, it wasn't safe for them to come in. And unfortunately, hit a chemical fire and died at age 34.
Oh my goodness!
So had the fastest cancer they ever had. So I've been really. That's why I'm down in Key West right now, because I'm trying to help the first responders, and I'm doing it with a way that makes sense. And we'll see how they do it. I've met with a lot of the commissioners and the mayor this last week. I was down there just doing that to talk a little bit about it, and we'll see how that plays out.
I'm sure they're all grateful.
Well, you'll find that there's different things in politics that are different each way.
Oh yeah.
So therefore, you have to deal with the ways things work. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be back again the week of November the 4th. So I'll be going back and forth. Hopefully, I don't have a 1.5 hours on the road with all that wreck that happened. So, but as we speak about you, let's talk about you and with God at that time, because I thought you had some conversation with God.
Oh yeah. Well. So I'm on the ground, and my first thought is I'm about to no-show on everybody today. And I had a whole bunch of appointments lined up, and I thought I need to take my phone out and start texting people. And I realized I couldn't move my arm.
Exactly.
And so and then I thought, well, my phone's probably covered with blood by now anyway, so maybe I should just give this up. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, God, I hate not showing up for people. It really bugs me. I mean, I like to be punctual, darn it. And all these people are going to be sitting around waiting for me, and I'm not going to be darn. And then I thought, and this is a really weird day to die. It's kind of gray outside. It's no sunny Florida. And what about this, Lord? Like, we were doing stuff together here. Like, we've just built a new church. We built a second campus 14 miles away, and got a bunch of stuff we're doing, and people are growing, and people are coming to know the Lord. Like, there's all this good stuff going on, and why am I dying today? And and I felt like God said, "Oh, Matt, pastors always do that when they die. They're always telling me what they're doing."
Wow.
And it was like, ouch. And I felt like the Lord said, I want to know what you want. And I thought, well, that seems completely irrelevant. I'm either going to be with you in 60 seconds or I'm not. What seems much more relevant is, what do you want? And I felt like God really said, no, I want to know what you want. And at that point, I realized I don't actually know what I want. I'm 60 years old. I should know what I want, darn it. Right. At 60, a man ought to know what he wants. And so I sat there for a moment, and then it occurred to me, what I really want is to walk my daughter down the aisle and hold grandkids. Right. That's what I want. And I felt like the Lord said, well, okay then. And so I'm laying there, and I'm hearing everybody stressed out. And I'm kind of hearing people going, he's not going to make I can hear the guy meeting for breakfast calling the church and saying, "Nah, there's too much blood. I don't think there's any way." And
You heard that.
and I hear, yeah, so I hear all of this, and I'm sitting there thinking, as calm as can be, and I'm not generally an overly calm human,
Right.
but I'm like emotionally as level as I've ever been in my life. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, given what I think the Lord just told me, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, here's what I want to do now, Carrie. I'm coming to you.
Okay.
So when did you first hear about all this?
So interesting enough, that morning when before Matt left, he actually woke up late and almost forgot the appointment that he had with Jamie.
Because it was usually my day off.
It's usually his day off. So I look back and I remember that being something that stands out. He's like getting up and going, wow, I've got an appointment at 8. And so I knew where he was going. He's like, hey, I'm going to meet Jamie for breakfast at Juniper, which is pretty common for him. So luckily I was up and getting ready because we had a roofer come and checking our house at 8 o'clock. So I was already kind of ready to go at 8 when he left. And I just remember the roofer left. We have a young man that's been staying with us, and he was eating cereal in the kitchen, and I get a call from Father Caleb, and it was probably, I mean, I think all this actually happened about 8:02. I don't think I got a call. Maybe it's probably 8:20, and Father Caleb was saying, "Hey, where's Matt?" And I said, "Well, he's at breakfast with Jamie at Juniper Market." And he's like, "Okay." He said something happened, but I'll call you back, because he was taking his kids to school, and he's got young kids. So second time he called me back, there's so much confusion in this. When things like this happen, you realize how nobody knows what's going on really.
Right, but
And
when did you finally understand?
I finally found out after he called back the third time and said, this was at 8:40. So this was 40 minutes in that he said, hey, Carrie, Matt was stabbed. And at that point, he'd called prior to that and said there was something that happened, and I knew there'd been stabbing, and he was probably with it. So I looked on my phone and was tracking his phone, to see where he was at. And I thought, oh, he must be following the ambulance to the hospital in Jacksonville. That's what I saw. I just assumed. And then that third call, when he called, he said, no, the person that got stabbed was Matt. And so that was 8:40. So he was already on the way
to the
to
hospital.
Jacksonville. Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll come back to that again in just a
Mhm.
minute or two. But I just wanted to know where you were, and when did you realize that it was him having to go to the hospital?
Yeah, that was about 8:40. So it'd
And
been,
now what do you do? What do you do?
well, Father Caleb had Mike, who's our music director. He had just gotten to church, and he was sending him to take me to just drive me. He's like, Carrie,
To follow right to the
follow.
hospital.
Right. And so at that point, I told Hunter, who was sitting there, what had happened, and I asked him to come with, and we just kind of waited outside, which was the longest 4 minutes of my life,
Yeah.
because I wanted to jump in the car and go myself, but I knew that wasn't good.
Right.
And so Michael flew in the driveway, we got in the car, and then just started heading to Jacksonville. And it was still rush hour at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
And you guys were like flying up the
Yeah, we
The
were going on
shoulders.
shoulders. I don't remember a lot about that, but I do remember he was
You saw
having
how
it.
busy it was. Yeah.
It was very busy. Mhm.
Yeah. No, it is. It's the wrong time to go.
It was
to
it was the
Jacksonville.
worst time.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to get stabbed, people, just do yourself a favor. Don't get stabbed in rush hour.
That's it. Well.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
There are learnings.
Here's
You
the
get life
difference.
learnings.
Well, here's the difference. It wasn't rush hour with God.
That's
Exactly.
true. That's true.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a little more testimony in, oh, yeah, and it took us 45 minutes to get him there.
That's what I'm saying. So that see, I always think this with God. Sometimes in a hurry. He said, "Don't be in a hurry. It's be my time, not yours."
Mhm.
And I always get there a minute ahead. And I'm wondering, how did I do that? How could I possibly done that? Because it was God's time, not mine, which he has no time. He has 100% of time all the time. He is time because he's love. And that's how it works with us. So all we have to do, it doesn't matter whether you're on, listen, for you to have gotten that one thing from that one person,
Mm.
is only God.
Yeah.
Only God. You couldn't have done that. It wouldn't have been possible. He didn't want to see you die.
Mm.
He didn't want to see you die.
Yeah, God doesn't really need the little Google map timer telling you what to.
That's right. Or the world,
just in
or
time.
the universe, or the universe. That's what we know. We know about him in relationship to all of that, and we can't just hide from that. We have to know that when God is telling us whatever it is. I remember when my wife passed away. Did I really want that? Did I really 52 years? Why would I want to do that? I don't want him. But it took me that period to realize that I was in pre-kindergarten with God, even though I'd gone to Ukraine, even though I'd been doing so many things and been in churches and been everywhere and been loving God. And when he finally reminded me that you got to get close, you always have to get close to God.
Yeah, the hard part is that the school of close usually involves a lot of pain.
Yeah, well, you have to have that because you got to go through it. It's kind of like when you do these things, Gary. You do these things, and here's where you are. You have fork in the road.
Right.
And that fork in the road says, well, this one looks a lot easier. Looks like there's going to be fun and really opportunities and all this. The other one looks like you have to go over a mountain. And you're trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, which one of these should I pick? And God's on over the mountain. But if you'd gone the other way, you'd reached a dead end.
Right.
And with him, you get to the top of the mountain with God. And that's really where you go. And so you have to make that choice yourself. You'll see something I wrote today. I came later than I thought I would. I was going to come here earlier than you were, much earlier, but I didn't because I had this poem that I had to write. And it'll come on later on to the show. It's something so different than that. It's called the Twisted Thoughts. And so we'll see how it has forgiveness. But let's talk about forgiveness now, because I know you had a lot of pain after all of this. They had to put those things into you. You were in the hospital for how long?
7 days?
It was about a week.
Yeah, about a week.
Yeah. See, I've been there also for that period during COVID in the ICU. So I understand that.
Yeah, they took good care of me. I think I was 4 days and 4 or 5 days in ICU and 2 days in the step down ICU, and then they sent me home.
Yeah, but you still had pain.
Oh yeah.
How long did that last?
Well, I still have weird stuff. Like a month ago, a friend was going to show me how to surf after 6 years. I was finally going to learn how to surf.
Yeah.
And I lay
You
down.
could play basketball instead.
Yeah. I lay down on the surfboard. I'm like, man, my rib really hurts. And I was at a pulmonologist 4 weeks later, and he said, hey, how did you break your rib? I'm like, oh man, all I did was lay down on a surfboard. So I still have weird things that go on from it. I still don't have my breath back. I can't run very well. I'm really slow and run out of stamina fast. So there's some pretty significant residual. I'm not the virile athletic man I once was.
Yeah, I got it. Well, I remember you were in sports and all that, so I got it. So when you were.
Yeah. So in the hospital, like I say, being stabbed doesn't hurt that bad. The things they do to save your life from being stabbed are really painful. They stuck in. They had to put chest tubes in without the benefit of anesthesia because I'd lost too much blood.
Right.
I'm like, well, can you give me anything? I'm like, nope. Local? What do I do? Grab onto the table and scream.
Yeah.
So you think, well, how much could a chest tube hurt? And the doc, I asked the doctor that, like, how bad could it be? And he said, well, it's probably the single most painful medical intervention we can do. And it's like, can't be worse than having a baby or passing a stone. And he said, well, I'm told it might be. You have a lot of nerve endings between your ribs, and I'm about to shove a garden hose between two of them. And so chest tubes are a less than stellar experience. So those hurt, and but that's the price of still being here is you have to have medical interventions, or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I know this. So now you have this
I think it was
lady.
hardest for her and the kids. Like my kids were both on the West Coast, and they basically got the you know pack pack and get on a plane right now.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I didn't
How
know.
is he?
I
I
didn't
don't
know.
know.
Right.
So my kids were like packing a black
Sure.
suit,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
knowing what they were going to find when they got
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Well, now you have this lady that you've never met, just that one moment,
Yeah.
and now you don't know where's.
Well, the police were actually trying to interview me as they're hauling me in. They're like, do you know her? I don't think I've ever seen her before. And and they're asking me a bunch of questions. And finally, I just said, I think I've lost most of my blood. You should really interview me again when I'm coherent.
That's
you know?
right. That's,
But and so that was weird that my one interview was I have no idea what I said and or how coherent or incoherent it might have been.
well, I know this. I was telling you this as before we came in that Mark Wood has done a thing at the Jacksonville Times Union, and
He
did this
really
last week.
nice story.
Yeah, yeah. So that's in too. So if anybody wanted to see that, you could look at that as well. But I want to know this. Here you have this lady who's knifed you for no reason and wants to come back and knife you more. So do you hate her?
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the hard part is I don't know what she was thinking or why, and I don't know if I'll ever know what she was thinking or why. But I'm not sure it really matters. The when she did it, I I think she looked surprised. And when I said you stabbed me, it looked like it was no longer her in control. And so if this was mental illness and followed by demons, that's not her. So how do you hold a grudge against her when it wasn't her? Or we battled not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. I I think that every church in this county that's doing the work of the gospel is being opposed, whether overtly or clandestinely, by those principalities and powers. And so I feel badly for this girl and hope best for her and pray for her. But no, hate just doesn't seem like a very good solution.
How did you forgive her?
Yes. Yeah.
And how'd you do that?
Well, I hadn't really thought about it, but when I came to in the hospital, it kind of between dosings of opiates,
Right,
'cause
right.
you have this kind of exceeding pain followed by some clarity, followed by more pain, depending on when the cycle of administering of the drugs is. And in one of them, someone said, what do you do with this girl? And I just immediately said, well, gosh, you should forgive her. I have. And I don't know that I ever like consciously thought, I forgive you. It just, somebody said something about it. And, I'm really angry about this. Why would she do this? And I'm like, well, don't waste your time doing that. Forgive her.
Right.
I have. And so it was sort of like I've already done this, but never really thought, hey, I need to look her up and look her in the eye and say, I forgive you. And, like a lot of times you'll hear people say, I can't forgive them because they haven't repented.
Yeah.
Unless they offer a heartfelt apology,
Yeah.
I can't forgive them. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you put yourself in that kind of bondage? I don't know. I don't know if what her state of mind is, but there are a lot of people in my life who haven't offered genuine, heartfelt apologies. I'm not going to go around with a list of grievances.
Right.
I know people who live like that, and it's tragic.
I'm going to share that a little bit, but I want to shift over to you, Carrie. So now you make it to the hospital, and you can't see him right away. So when were you able to see him?
I mean, it took a few minutes because I didn't realize, because it was an investigation, they can't just let you go in. But luckily, Carlos Avalis, who's the fire chief, he basically had followed the ambulance and had been by Matt's side the whole time. He helped get me in sooner. So it's probably about 15 minutes after I got there, which wasn't too bad.
All right.
So I just went in there, and he was eyes open with a breathing mask on, and I was just super excited to see him awake.
Right.
And Carlos had called me we were probably at 15 minutes before we got to the hospital, and said, "Carrie, I'm talking to him." So that's when that was the first moment I knew he was actually alive,
Right.
because I didn't know if he was or not. And I know Michael was driving and getting, getting a lot of calls. And I just said, "Hey, I don't want to know anything until I get to the hospital," because there'd been, again, so much stuff going out. Nobody knew for sure. And there was so much confusion. It's like, I need to know the facts when I get there. So I just, when I walked in the hospital, that's when I found out he was.
Did they tell
Sorry.
you about how he had been knifed?
Well, we didn't really go into details. The only part of the story I knew about that was from what Father Caleb had told me.
When would that have been? When would that have been?
I'm just trying to figure out when I got the details.
So Jamie called Caleb.
Right.
Right.
Caleb didn't understand what was going on. Caleb thought that Jamie's son was the one who'd been knifed, and it took a while.
Right.
And then apparently it went out as public media that downtown was locked down, and the preschool parents were all being contacted, that a 40-year-old priest had been stabbed. And I was like, man, when you lose your blood, you must look really young.
That's it.
So they, because Caleb is the 40-year-old
Sure,
priest. So
sure.
poor Caleb's wife is on the West Coast, and she gets a phone call.
Oh, my
I think
God.
your husband has been stabbed.
So this is how crazy it is, because in the moment things were just all over the place.
Yeah.
So all I knew was when I got to the hospital, he got stabbed, and really my big concern was that if he was still alive or not. The details I would get later, but that really didn't matter. Once I walked in and saw him, and he could actually communicate with me, I was good. I was like, I don't need details till I'll hear that later. I just
Right.
want to know he's alive.
Yeah, of course, of course. And then later, when you did learn all of this, did you forgive this lady?
It's interesting because God has really, early on in our marriage, he worked on the forgiveness aspect with me. And I'm a pretty forgiving person, but we had an incident early on in our life where I had to really forgive somebody. It took me a couple of years, and God really taught me what that was like and what that meant. And it really helped me, the rest of my life, realizing he can change your heart and give you forgiveness that only comes from him for the person. And this person never apologized or anything.
Well, and we ran into him 35 years
Mhm.
later, and he was still being eaten up by anger
Right.
over that situation.
And you realize how you can become so bitter when you're unforgiven, when you don't forgive somebody. So I think my big test was, I don't know if he was still in the hospital, but they brought her, I saw the clip where they brought her up, it was a video of
Sure.
her charges.
Right.
And I remember praying before I watched the video, Lord, please, I pray that I really have forgiveness towards her, because I was a little worried, like, am I not? And I remember they showed her, and she just looked so small and so fragile. And she walked up to hear the charges that were presented to her. And all I felt was sadness and compassion. And I was like, all right, God, you've definitely worked this in me.
Yeah. Well, I wanted you to know, as I was telling you this the other day, yesterday, that we were talking as I was driving back on Saturday. Yeah. So as we were doing that, I told you about what was happening in South Africa. And they had put then the later new president. He'd been in jail for 20 years, and then the Archbishop Tutu, who was also here in Jacksonville for a period of time at the University of North Florida, that he had a daughter that also had a child that was killed, and so he and the president at that time, I'm trying to remember, starts with an M, that was the president on. I'll think of it in a minute. But as a result of that, they had to forgive the white people for what they did to them. And so this book he wrote about was forgiving. And you have to do that. You have to forgive. Because you realize what would have happened in South Africa if they had not forgiven? Because there'd been a fight between all of them again. And it would just be another fight that just goes on and on and on. And that's true in Ukraine right now. That's why there is no forgiveness. There is none. And it's so difficult to understand. And then I didn't tell you this one, but the person, and I've been on this before on the show, but I think it beats more now today than it did when I spoke the other day about whenever it was. And that is that the people that own the beer in Colorado, that Coors beer, the Coors family is who they are, and the father had been kidnapped. And the father had been kidnapped by this person, and they had to come up with a lot of money to pay it off. They had, there were two brothers and a sister, and they paid for it. Well, he still killed them anyway.
Mm.
And so he went to jail, and only one of the Coors sons forgave. He went to the jail and forgave the person for doing, who thought he was a jerk for coming in to see him. Just like you just described the person that you just told me about after 35 years. And that person carries it with his life. Unfortunately, the daughter and the other son have never been able to forgive. And therefore, they've gone through so much trouble that goes into it. And so when you do something like this, you do need to have forgiveness, because God forgives us. And if he didn't forgive us, where would we be? Where would we be? Tell me where you think you would be if we didn't have a God that would forgive us. How would we be able to do where we are today?
Well, I think there would be there is nothing that I've done that warrants God's forgiveness.
Right.
Nothing.
Well, you have to forgive your sin.
And yet God forgives me through the death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus. That God said, you guys like killing stuff, here, kill me. And the power of God's willingness to humble himself and be found as a man and turn over his life on a cross for us. The beauty of that as an example of forgiveness for us to,
without a doubt,
for us to follow. If we don't, the fruit of that, I know statistically, unforgiveness leads to a shortened life, and there's a host of health risks associated with unforgiveness. So, I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for anyone I care about. Yeah. Now, it looks so foolish, though, in the eyes of the world.
It does.
What do you do if you're Ukraine and someone has taken a quarter of your territory? Go, hey, just take it, so they come back and take another 20% 5 years later? Because by not doing anything to Putin taking Crimea, he just came back and took Donbass. If you say, I forgive you, does he come back and take the rest of Ukraine? Because he wants it all. It looks so foolish in the eyes of the world. And I don't know on a national, on a political level what forgiveness looks like. But I do know that on a personal level, it looks like freedom and peace.
Well, and you can't do it on your own. This was for me, that first couple of years early on was a prayer and having to give it to him and go, hey, change my heart. Because emotionally, I can't do it on my own. And so it was constantly dependent on him to start taking that away. Because as a human, that's not a natural thing to do, is forgive,
Well, because grievance can become a friend. It can become a cherished friend that we like to, I've been wronged. Well, yeah, you probably have. And you've probably wronged some people along the way, too.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the irony, that this guy held a grudge against us for 35 years. And there were 150 other people that were witnesses to this. And of the 150 other people, 149 of them, including this person's own children, go, man, he really did you wrong. And yet he's angry at our part in it. And gosh, 35 years later, still eaten up by that. This is not worth it. Whatever the grievance is, let it go. Let God carry that for you.
Well, we have a lot of that conversation through the Bible. We have a lot of that. And sometimes just imagine that you have to give up your child and you want to put him on a fire. And he's the one that God said to you, I'm going to have this one for you. This is the one I want you to have. And now you have to put him on a fire. Where was your faith? Where was your faith?
Yeah, God occasionally asks us to do some things that don't make a lot of sense.
It is, but it's your faith. It's your faith that makes the difference. Because without faith, you cannot do any of these things too. Because if you don't believe in God, how can you ever give forgiveness?
Well, my belief is a little bit. The big thing is that God provided the land.
Yeah,
so it's always
but you didn't know that.
me just trusting in God
faith.
has always been faithful, and He's always come through in the big ways. So I'm going to lean on the fact that He's got an unbroken track record, even better than Charles Barkley, Father Time is undefeated.
That's it.
God's goodness is undefeated.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I've got this poem. I think it's time for me to at least
Poem
share
up.
it.
Pump me up.
Well, I don't. I think Kurt has already seen it, but you haven't.
Okay.
So this is one that I did that is there. Maybe
In Pages, you're revealing you're an Apple user.
I know, but it's terrible because every time I do it, it changes on me. So I have to go into something else besides that in order to do it. So it's called A Twisted Thought.
Twisted thoughts.
Yeah, twisted thoughts.
You can confess to me.
That's it. Well,
you might want to do it after the cameras have stopped.
That's right. No, I don't. No, we'll do it all.
Okay.
Thought I was lost, but I was found. And now wondered if I will be with God in eternity. It was a happy hippie hi-yay until years just passed away, where light was dimmed. I guess I thought nothing was still not holding me back, but then I cried. Every thought of mine was empty, and yet I thought maybe soon there would be someone's grace for eternity. But each step I took was one step back until the heavens opened, and that I knew God was always there. It was my twisted thoughts that tried to take my heart and leave me all alone. How these thoughts could ever come, I don't understand, because God's forgiveness is what He gives. Now the light is no longer dim because God's light shines. And my thoughts are now thankfulness being with Him. So
Beautiful.
as I told you, I did this while I was going, and I had to write it before I could come here. So I didn't know why I was doing this, but I did it. So there you go. So God's been doing that with me for quite a long time. And it's okay. I want to do whatever it takes me. I'm on that path of righteousness, which is where I want to be. And
welcome to grace, forgiveness, and hope in Jesus Christ.
There you go. All the time.
That's our motto.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, poems. That's rap. You gonna put that to a beat?
I could. Yeah, that's right. Maybe I thought you might jam with me as I was doing it. I thought, here comes. He's gonna
like a beatbox.
Exactly. Well, we're in that place now, and we're thinking of this as well. But I was also wondering, as you have now gone for almost a year, what that's done for you.
Well, I did because of this. I won our family talent show at Christmas.
Yeah, I'm sure
So
that's right.
I wrote a rap song about this, and
Oh, did you?
yeah, and to the tune of Ice Ice Baby, and that allowed me to win the family talent show. Now that we're talking about rapping,
Yeah.
I don't know. I suspect, um, I suspect I'm a little. It's strange. I went to work with a trauma therapist, and the first thing they do is they have you work with a trauma therapist, and my conclusion to all of that is I think probably the people who worked on me had more trauma than I did. I mean, they had to see a friend on the ground and looking like they're not going to make it. I was having kind of a lovely moment with the Lord, and had this. I'd had a couple of near death experiences. One when I was about 20, one when I was about 30, and one at 60. And at 20, I had an absolute visceral terror that I was almost killed. And at 30, the same thing. And I was completely calm at the at what was actually much closer to dying than either of those. That, and I realized that in those two times early on, I thought, well, I'm a person who follows Jesus Christ, so I believe I'm gonna spend eternity in the remade heaven and earth, and so why would I be afraid? Maybe I'm not really that faithful after all. Yeah. And at 60, I went, okay, well, if now's it, okay, I've got things here that feel like unfinished business, but if now's the time, then okay. And I realized that the fear had gone from about 100 to 0, and I realized that the Christian life over time, drawing close to the Lord over time, actually changes us.
No question.
And I'm not the same person at 60 that I was at 30 and at 20. And in the Anglican tradition, you have these 3 rhythms of grace: daily in the Word, weekly at the table, and annually in the story of God. Word, table, story, and that those 3, they're actually out of Benedictine monasticism.
Right. Yeah.
Anglicanism is really Benedictine monasticism pushed to everybody. And so it's the monkhood of the believer, so to speak, instead of the priesthood of the believer, which is most Protestants. And so I realized that pattern of every day in Scripture, reading the Bible through once a year, 80 years, and every week at the Lord's table on bended knee with open hands, receiving grace, and then every year in the story of the gospel, the liturgical year, those rhythms, having done it for 20 years, because I grew up outside the faith and then spent my first 20 years as a follower of Jesus in sort of a generic, sort of generically evangelical, and that these 20 years of liturgical and sacramental discipleship are actually making me more like Jesus and more ready for eternity.
Yeah. Well, I think as you see that, one of the places that I always go, and I've done it when I told you about my brother, Timothy Paul, I would go to the Monastery of the Holy Spirit up in Conyers, Georgia, and that is also Benedictine, and it's purely the monks are there, and it was also just an amazing place of silence because you don't talk, you're there, and you get up at 3:30 and
except for the prayers.
Yeah, the prayers, but that's it. So you don't do it, and you're there with silence. They turn the lights off in the middle of the morning because
end with Compline and go off in silence and begin with, Lord, open our lips and our mouth shall proclaim your praise.
That's it. Well, every monastery is in our heart. Is in our heart.
Yeah,
it's always there.
Yeah.
It's always there.
Well, to answer your question, I don't think being stabbed changed me. What I think it did was reveal to me the work of God in my life over the last 2 decades, and that slow, patient, ferment work of the Holy Spirit in my life. It's God's work but we have to put our, if you want to get hit by a truck, you got to stand in the street. This is standing in the street of the Holy Spirit. So, and that it actually it's working.
Yeah, well, you know that from all of us, and Carrie, I want to kind of get your last thoughts too, of how this 1 year has made a difference.
I think when he started sharing his story in the hospital, what his conversation with God, I think first of all, it helped me be way less uptight about death. And I mean, I was pretty okay, but this kind of took it to a whole nother level. And also just seeing how in this bad situation, this hard situation, that God makes beauty out of ashes. So many neat stories have happened as a result of this with people and what they've experienced and how God's changed them because of the story. It's just been a pretty amazing year of just seeing God continue to move in a hard situation. And it's really changed me as well.
Yeah, and in how many ways?
I'm just much more bold, much more less afraid of death, just going, hey, let's just do what we need to do for our time here, and God will direct it, and just enjoying, kind of expectant of what he has in store every day. So it's just more of an expectancy, not a fear. I think people were really surprised that, are you fearful more? And actually I'm less fearful to a point that it's surprising to me as well.
Yeah, well, that's the way it can be with God, because he takes us on his path. That's the path. And you don't know where that path's going to take you. Whether it means that you're laying on the ground with blood coming all over, or whether you're down in the hospital feeling the pain. And you know why? Because that pain is inside your heart, not necessarily where you think it is in your lungs. And that pain came alive with you to be able to be alive with God. And that's why he takes you on the path you're on now. And where you go is where he takes you.
The beauty is, I think I know the destination. I just don't know of the myriad ways of getting there.
Right.
I don't know how the Lord's going to get us there.
I'll tell you how it is if you go to Disney World. And you go to go on top of all of that mountain, that's very much there. And I want you to assume that mountain doesn't have any lights in it at all. And you're in that roller coaster going around in darkness. And you come out with a light. That's where you've been.
Not having been to Disney World yet,
yeah,
I'm going to take it by faith.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, we know that this is the way we are, and we hope that you understand that too, because I think as we look at life, we have one thing to look at the most. And where are we with God? Where are we with God? Where are you with God? Where are we going on with God? Where is God in relationship to you? And where are you in relationship to God? That will take us on the path. We'll figure out which one.
In John 1, it says, to all who receive him, even to those who believe in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God.
That's it. That's what we want to be.
And it gives you joy in the journey, though. The thing is, it's just been a very joyful year, joy-filled year.
Yeah.
Just kind of, being free, not afraid, and just trusting him at a different level than I ever have. So it's been fun, actually.
Well, that's really good, and I'm very helpful again with DJ Clam Shack, and I'm also good with the Chris Shee family. And I want you to say, I'm here today, and we'll sing a song together one of these days.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Father Matt. It's been really good, and thank you very much too. It's been a blessing. So thank you again, and God bless you all. We'll see you again in a couple weeks. Thank you. Be on YouTube as it's in now, and be on Facebook, and also on our app, 904 Now app. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.